I think it is very interesting to, talk about building startups and strategically building startups. I think one of the key question that comes is, for anybody who's thinking about a startup, how does a startup idea come in place? So I think it's more like a chicken and an egg problem. We say what came first? Was it the chicken or was it the egg? I think in the same context, when we talk about startups, it's very important to understand, did the startup come first or the idea come first, or is it the problem statement that came first? So for me, this was a riddle, and I will explain to you how I solved the riddle. So I'll give you a little bit of story around how the idea of Good Good Piggy came up, and maybe that helps us understand, is it the egg or is it the chicken which comes up first? Mostly, and I'll tell you my story how, I was working in London and I was into private equity investment. How from there I chose to take a path of entrepreneurship, and what came first to me? Was it the idea? Was it the problem? What happened? So for Good Good Piggy, the story went very simply. Most of you must have already heard a little bit of it on Shark Tank, but that's only a little bit of it that you could see. For us, or for me personally, when I was flying back from London, I was getting a lot of my relatives gifts. My nephew is 5 years old, four and a half, 5 years old back then, and he was just starting to learn numbers, right? And how many of you have gone to London or not? But there are so many souvenir shops, and in souvenir shops, one thing which is very common is piggy banks. I think even in souvenir shops in India, piggy banks are a common feature. So I got him a piggy bank thinking he's picking up numbers. Maybe this will be a good way for him to learn about money, right? We got him a piggy bank and I gifted it to him when we were at a dinner table. He was so excited seeing it, right? His first piggy bank, his first time where he could add or pick up money or ask people to put money in his possession. He went around the room asking everybody to put coins in the piggy bank. Now people who were in the room were mostly people who are my age, my cousins who are older to me. Some of those cousins have got married, right? So generally, if I would say, we were all millennials who were sitting in the room. And I had just come back from London, so definitely I was not carrying any cash. I was the person who was carrying Google Pay or Apple Pay, and so was when I realized everybody else. When he went to, somebody told him, "Nahi boss, Bheem, you pay." Somebody told कि आप जी पे, somebody said Paytm, but nobody was carrying coins or cash in their pocket to put in that piggy bank, right? And now this boy comes back and he then goes back to my grandfather जिनके पास coins है, and they put up that stuff in the piggy bank. Now this was the first time I saw that India is changing, right? The fintech ecosystem in India is at par to anywhere else in the world. Nonetheless, if you all are reading newspapers, then you always know how well we have done in terms of digital payments and transfers, and how our technologies today are crossing borders, are acting as solutions or as potential solutions in our neighboring countries. For that matter, Singapore, etc. Everybody is looking at how UPI will be a defining solution in terms of payment transfers. Now, this was a reality that I think everybody in today sees, even in tier 1 to tier 4 cities where most payment mechanisms have become cashless, have become invisible. Now, what I also noticed around this journey when I spent time with my nephew is he was not seeing cash, right? And that was leading to something. What was happening here? We were all on a vacation in Shimla because I was just flying back to London after a week, and everybody was enjoying. This little boy was really bored, so he came back with my phone and he told me that Masi, have made a cart of Hot Wheels and something something. Everything will be delivered tomorrow. What he told me was there is a thing called Amazon. All it needs is a three-digit permission pin from you, and it will deliver all my toys to me on this vacation. And from tomorrow, I'll start having fun. And I said, look, this is a lot of money. You're asking me to spend a lot of money. Maybe I just got you many toys. You can be well with those. And he told me, no, Amazon never charges money. When have you seen Amazon charging us money? Amazon comes, it delivers whatever I want, and I can start enjoying and playing with it. And that's when I noticed that because this boy has never seen his parents making payments to Amazon or to a delivery boy which is coming at home, he thinks or he is taking the power of money for granted, right? He never realizes that all of that is happening because of money related transactions. So this was the first time when I saw that money becoming invisible, or the fintech ecosystem growing to be where it is today, very credibly done in India, is leading to some sort of implications on the younger generation, where they are missing to note there is some power of money. Think about all of our childhood, right? When we all were young, at least when I was young, bread used to be for 8 rupees. Mama used to give me 10 bucks. And she used to say, जाकर आप bread लेकर आओ, eggs लेकर आओ, whatever you would do. So you would go step out as a child in your nearby mother dairy or whatever that is, get groceries for your house. 2 rupees which used to be left in your hands, or 1 rupee, were left to you. Do you want to buy a toffee, etc. out of it, or you want to put it up in your piggy bank, right? And parents would tell you, put it in your piggy bank, save that money, etc. That was how we were learning about money. My nephew, he is not doing any grocery shopping. Nobody is telling him, ye pakdo 10 rupees, go and get us something. Everything is happening on a big basket, on a Grofers, on a Blinkit, on whatever that it is that India startup ecosystem is offering us. So this is where for me there was observations before there was a problem, or before there was an idea. So I think one place where I think I will solve the chicken and egg story will be that the point about building a startup, and I highlight the topic for today is strategically building a startup while competing with big players. I think it's important to understand a startup and the word startup, where it is coming from. So the next consequence for when we were building Good Piggy was to go and research on what is happening around us. So, like I shared these incidences with you, these small incidences, I went and I started researching on these topics. I started doing pure secondary research, and we made approximately, a 25 to 40 pager document which just spoke about what it is around us that we first have to understand, right? This was at the same time being supplemented with a entrepreneurial mindset, and I'll tell you how that was happening for me. While I was somebody who's doing a job, who is looking at a very promising career in London, who is building up, is looking to settle down there, etc., there was that aspect where at the same time I was selected in Kairos Society. Now Kairos Society is a society which is started by Bill Clinton, Richard Branson, all these big names, for them to connect with younger people and start training them, because they have scale and power, we have ideas. It's about bridging that gap, right? Something like an event today where if I have some learning, you guys are willing to hear me out, we can bridge that gap and exchange that knowledge in the corridor. So I enrolled onto Kairos, and during this time, there were people, amazing people from, I met Alexander Grotz, who is a design thinker. He is, designing for Boeing, McDonald's. All of these big innovations that you see today are somehow, in terms of design, being thought out by him. So, there was that entrepreneurial mindset and that constant grooming from my environment, which was guiding on how to plug this research, how to plug the problem, how to bridge that gap into something which will become solvable, right? Now, why I mentioned the feedback loop here is, once this all of it was coming down to paper, and I really recommend anybody who's looking at entrepreneurship to start putting their research, their observations, their understanding about the problem, their thoughts about a solution, with respect to different mentorships that you're getting from different areas, onto a paper, and then start running that paper document. Like, for example, with me, I remember, I'm not very, very old. I'm 26 years age. I just turned 26. I was 25 when I went to Shark Tank last year. Not very far from leaving a university and going into a job. So, the things can happen really fast for you, but it's about how you make them happen for me. So, for me, it was about a feedback loop. We put up a small website. It is not called it was back then, it was not called goodgoodpiggy.com. It was called something else. We put it up over a weekend with my brother who's in IT. I said, what are you doing on a Saturday night? He said, nothing. I said, okay, come over. Let's, put some stuff that I have on paper into a website and see if that can be presented. Once we made that in one night, a Saturday night, I promised him drinks, and he promised me to build up a website around the problem statement that I had cracked on almost a 50-60 pager document. That was then shared across, people, mentors, etc. So one of the, because I was from investment banking background, I knew a couple of people who were investing into startups, etc. And I would send this link to them that, what, maybe just tell me, I just met a startup. I would never say it's my startup. I just met a startup, this is what they're doing, what do you think about it? And that sort of feedback loop starts coming in. This is when we met somebody in India and they really liked the idea, and they said, what, maybe it's a fantastic thing, the startup is doing well, maybe it needs more churning. And the feedback, because that feedback was coming in and the feedback was talking in the right direction, I started to meet customers and parents. Y Combinator, or the startup school also recommends that you are speaking to your customers or your parents in terms of what problems they are facing before you even start solving them into a product. So we started meeting parents. I met a parent who said that, and these are real stories, right? He said ki my son, he went to our grandfather and he said कि दादाजी आप वो जो कश्मीर में लैंड है ना वो बेच दो. 8 year old boy. And दादा इज लाइक भाई मैं क्यों बेच दूं, वाई डू आई सेल लैंड? एंड ही इज लाइक पापा ने बोला है कि मुझे लेगो बहुत एक्सपेंसिव आता है, पैसे खत्म हो गए हमारे पास, आप लैंड बेच दो, वी नीड टू बाय लेगोज. Right? And it's funny because parents are sharing these stories in a very funny manner, and they are very laughable stories. There was another story where a parent said कि my 6 year old, she fed everything to talking tom. उनको, the child didn't know Google Pay पीछे से attached है, and the child was recklessly spending on talking tom, and almost 9-8 thousand rupees. Talking tom ate that much food, which is almost for the grocery budget of that family. And this kind of stories on gaming, etc., they are very very common stories. If you ask parents कि बच्चे कर देते हैं, उनको नहीं पता कि पीछे से क्रेडिट कार्ड कनेक्टेड है. So if you notice, this is coming back to the same problem statement that we were aligning. Money has become invisible, money has become digital. We understand it because we are adults, but is the new generation understanding this, that invisible money or digital money is still money? They have no idea. This is my nephew, right, age 4, and he was, like I said, Amazon does not charge cash. The same morning he was asking me, but why does God need cash? We were at, my masi had her fast, and I still remember we were at a temple. I gave him 100 rupees ki jaake aap jaake donation box mein dal kar aao. And in the morning he asked me, why does God need money? I can keep this money in my pocket to buy my toys. The same evening, he's asking me, why is Amazon? I mean, Amazon never charges money, right? So contradictions where where children, for them, if cash is in their hands, they understand the meaning of it. But if it is not there, there is no visibility around that problem. And talk to me about it. We are all adults, right? All of us have different spending behaviors when we have 1,000 rupees in our hand versus 1,000 rupees in our digital wallets. The way we will spend it, how we will feel while spending it. Today, I mean, I will say all of us, let's go out to a cafe. We all go and spend our and have a good chat. But when the bill comes and you have to pay 3,000 rupees as a 500 ke note karke and put it in that folder versus put your card, tap it, and get out of that place. Two very different experiences that happen. Let's move on to the next slide. And I think this is what I was also explaining, where now once you understand the problem, where you've spoken to customers, etc., you start understanding what is happening. So for us, we started understanding that children today, especially after pandemic, are very very open to using technology. They are very, in fact, post pandemic, they are given technology devices. So statistically, let me talk about it. Today's generation is the most tech supplied generation in the history, in human history, when we talk about technology. Let's move on. So there is that aspect where we need to understand technology is playing a very important role, and that in real life, on an average, even a child is spending more than 4 hours, be it on school, be it otherwise, be it on different platforms in technology. So if solutions have to be brought forward, they cannot go without using technology, especially when today money, or the money ecosystem itself, has become technologically driven. Let's move on to the next slide. We understood that this sort of a environment is here to say 200%, and it will, and it is influencing behaviors and personalities and habits of customers, of parents, especially children and young children, right? Let's move on to the next slide. When we talk about this, and we look at it from a macro perspective, we will understand. And research also points out that when we talk about India, and when we talk about G20 nations, and when we see कि अच्छा उनमें financial literacy trends क्या है, India is not doing very well generationally. अगर आप इसी problem statement को देखोगे, you will realize your grandfather, your father and yourself, the amount of wealth you can generate has been decreasing. If your grandfather left so much for your family, your father is leaving maybe slightly lesser, and you as a person who is in the ecosystem and now into a working active working force has even lesser capacity to create that wealth and generate that wealth, or for that matter save, right? So, and debt itself is increasing in the world. Talk to me about BNPL solution, buy now pay later solution, being so popular, right? The amount of debt and accessibility of that spending is increasing, and as a generation we are bound to have 169% or more debt from our previous generation. Let's move on to our next slide. I don't even want to ask everybody to raise hands. In your minds you can do it, of how many of us are doing education which is based or is getting finance from debt, right? It has become the environment around us. Now, financial literacy as a problem, are schools in India teaching it? The answer is no. Recently CBSE has introduced a literature in class 6 which talks about financial literacy, but is anybody really doing or teaching about it? The answer is no. Let's move on to the next slide. When we thought, are parents addressing this problem statement? Well, parents themselves are lacking this financial literacy. How will they teach it to their kids, right? A large chunk of our parents today are millennials. They are probably slightly older than the age group in symbiosis, who become parents, who get married, and most of us are all heavy social media users, living our lives paycheck to paycheck, and in most cases themselves struggling to pay off debt, right? So when they talk about teaching something to children or how to do situation, manage the situation, they perceive this subject as a very very burdensome subject, राइट? व्हेन आई स्पोक टू पेरेंट्स, आप क्यों नहीं बात करते बच्चों से पैसों के बारे में, दे विल कम से अभी से क्यों, देयर इनोसेंस विल गो अवे, इतना बर्डसन टॉपिक है, मटीरियलिस्टिक थोड़ी बनाना है बच्चों को, देयर ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ नोशंस अराउंड मनी, वेयर मनी, बिकॉज इट इज अ रैट रेस फॉर अस एज एडल्ट्स, we assume it is a topic which will be a problematic topic to attempt with children, because it is a problematic topic for ourselves in our daily lives, right? In terms to manage it, in terms of thinking about a career, in terms of getting that money or dough in place for your versus your aspiration. Let's move on to the next slide. So this is where all these problem statements were getting us closer to the fact कि अच्छा financial literacy अगर हमें solve करना है and we have to tackle invisible money, then what it is that we need to do, we need to first create a solution for the new gen families, for the modern families, for them, for their children. If it has to be a thing for children, then what is the age group we want to look at, what kind of brand feel we are supposed to give, what is it, and how should we bring out a solution. So these were the, now once the problem is understood, we were going towards finding a solution which is aligned to how the customers feel, what the problems they are solving, and potentially of seeing can it make an impact into their lives. Let's move on to the next slide, where I will now pause and move this direction from, this was the history of how Good Piggy was starting, or what a startup is, how you think about a startup, how you bring the idea in front, and how you attempt it.